Testing. Can you hear me? Sorry about that. My wife was using my computer yesterday, and I thought my wires were connected to the right things, and they weren't. I had my Wacom tablet plugged into my audio. Okay. Whew. So, well, you didn't really miss anything. So, thanks everybody for showing up. I got these files from Hannibal Sculptor, and I'm going to try and so apparently, oh no. Oh, it's not responding. That's fine. So we're just waiting for this mesh to pre-process. I have a scan data of a sculpt that got destroyed, and we're going to try and save it with ZBrush. Right now what I'm doing is trying to pre-process this 4.5 million down to something a little bit easier to work with than ZBrush, just because we won't lose that much detail. You know, a lot of it is just noise anyway. So if I decimate this down to like 100,000 or 200,000, it might be a little bit easier to work with. So I'm doing good. Thanks for showing up, everybody. I'm trying a new chat thing here, so hopefully it'll be easier. We'll see how it goes. And just in case you're wondering, I have Twitch, YouTube, and Periscope on, and it looks like Periscope's showing up. So looks like that'll work too. Awesome. Thanks for watching my stuff. And we'll see how well this goes. Okay, this is pre-processed here. So right now we're sitting at 4.628 million, and I'm going to decimate this thing down to, let's give it like, we'll start with like 500,000. We'll decimate this. And you see when we get it down to 500,000, it's a lot easier to work with, and we didn't lose any perceptible details. So that's where I'm going to start. That'll just make it a little bit easier for me to move this thing around. So like I said before, we turned our floor on. Well, like I said before, but you couldn't hear me, I turned the floor on just to make sure we're oriented in ZBrush correctly, Z forward, and all that. And it also looks like we're made of several different parts here. That should be okay, but we can try and clean up a little bit of that too. So let's go ahead and stand him up. So and this was a sculpt that was destroyed. And like I said, we're going to try and save it here. So if he's putting more of his weight on this leg here, it looks like the little support leg would go down further. Maybe. Let's see. And we'll go ahead, and we don't need to center him perfectly because he's not going to be a mirrored object, although you could sit here and mirror and weld and get that down as well as you could. Okay, so we got this piece here, and we also have an extra Thor head, which looks like it's a little bit updated. Yeah, so it's a little bit, so we got the body here, and then this Thor head is a little better. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and match that up. I'm going to turn on transparent, and I'm going to move this up here and move this back. And let's go ahead and rotate this thing around so we can kind of get it into place here. And luckily they're the same size, which helps a little bit. That way we don't have to rescale it or anything. So we can kind of just mush this back into place. So that just gives us a frame of reference. So the body scan with the head lost a little bit of detail, but the head scan by itself has plenty. Let's see here. Okay, let's say that's close enough. So now what we can do is alt tap this body scan here. Looks like I need to rotate it a little bit more this way. Nope, head, there we go. So now we go here to here. Let's take this and we'll rotate it. Very, very, a little bit tedious getting this stuff lined up, but it doesn't take too long. So we got the head on there and we got the body. So now we don't need this original head. I'm going to go ahead and turn my floor off since we don't really need that anymore. And we'll go ahead and get rid of this. Make sure I don't leave any holes that are too large here. And that we can probably just leave. And we'll grab a little bit more of his neck here. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that. So now, if I turn on transparency, you're going to see we got this head here, and then we got his body. On the body, I'm going to go ahead and delete hidden because we don't need those polys anymore, and I'm going to go ahead and merge down. There we go. So we've got a new high-resolution head here, and this head is a separate piece. So we'll get to that in a second. So we've got our Thor body and our head, and then these pieces here might be trouble. What I'm going to do is hold down Control-Shift, grab this little piece. Let's do a quick save, actually. I don't know what he's holding there. Let's assume something manly. Okay, so let's see. We got this piece here. I'm going to go grab this one, Control-Shift-A, and we've got this piece here. So if I mask this piece and invert it, I'm going to pop this piece out and see. It's not really adding a whole lot, I don't think. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. It's just going to cause a little bit of problems here while we're sculpting this thing. And another thing we could do. So I know I don't need this piece. We can go ahead and get rid of that. So we can go ahead and delete hidden. So also with this one, what I can try doing, we know that head is its own piece. I'm going to grab this one temporarily, Control-Shift-A to just grab the head. I'm going to split this off. I'm going to grab this body, and I'm just going to grab a piece of the contiguous body, Control-Shift-A. Okay, that looks pretty clean. If I Control-Shift-Drag now, it's going to invert. You see there's a lot of garbage just kind of hanging out. So what I'm going to do is just do a quick delete hidden on that, and then we can merge that head back down. And that'll kind of clean up that body scan with all those little floaters that were hanging around. So these should all be contiguous meshes. And we've also got the little post from the original armature on there. So I think we're getting pretty close. So now let's figure out how we want to make this one contiguous mesh and remesh it. So one thing we can try and do is just dynameshing it and hoping that it closes all the holes and it reacts correctly. So let's give that a shot, just as one of our first tries here. I don't know what resolution we're working at. I'm going to turn off project, turn off blur, and just hit dynamesh, and we'll see how that goes. And yeah, it crashed. So dynamesh isn't going to be something we can do. It's not a huge deal. I just wanted to try it before we get too far down. So we know that's not going to work. Let's go ahead and load that up. And oops, looks like when I did a quick save, we didn't grab this part. So really quickly, I can just I'm going to grab his head here, Control-Shift-A, and then I'm going to split him off. I'm going to grab his body, Control-Shift, grab a little piece of his body here, Control-Shift-A, and then just do a delete hidden, and then merge these back down. And should I have dynamesh, ZRemesh the head? Nah, we'll be okay. So I'll merge these down, and now we'll do a quick save, and that'll go ahead and save it. So, and again, if I miss something in the chat, just bear with me. You can just keep saying it, and I'll catch it up in here. I have a ton of tutorials about alphas. If you go back through, you know what? I need my Nightbot thing hooked up. So we can do here, and we can do, where else we got? We got here. And let me go to my playlist here. So here, if you go to Intro to ZBrush Part 3, 3 is where I get heavy into the ZBrush alphas. And also the Twitch TV PavMic, I go over everything. So you can just go in there, and there's a ton of stuff on custom alphas. I think when we did, you see the first preview video on the Twitch TV.PavMic there. You can see the planet with like all the little, and also the live stream rocks. We go over into custom alphas too. We do like bullet hole alphas that we can kind of scatter. So a lot of alphas there. I got this from Hannibal Sculptor. He messaged me on Facebook, and this sculpt got destroyed, and so but he has scans of it. So we're gonna try and save his sculpt here with the scan. Looks like he's a little off balance. Let's tilt him forward a little more here. Okay, so now we tried dynameshing, and that didn't work. So what I'm going to try this time is, because if we could probably ZRemesh this piece, the body and the head, and then project all, and that might give us a little bit more of a usable mesh. But I'm going to try remeshing this thing. So what I'm going to do, I guess I don't need this head here, so we'll go ahead and delete that. So we got this body here. Let's go to, instead of ZRemesh, let's try remesh. And I'm not going to do remesh across X, and we're just going to hit remesh all. And that'll go ahead and give me a blanket of polygons here that I can start projecting back to my object and start cleaning up. It's not ideal. It's not how I would prefer to work. A dynameshing would be the easier option, but it seems to be having a problem. So I'm going to go back to the ZRemesh here, and let's go ahead and fix this a little bit. And you can ZRemesh at different resolutions and polish. So if we delete that and we go, you know what, only polish at 5, and bump my resolution up to like 175, and we hit remesh. And again, not across any symmetry because he's not symmetrical. That'll give us a little bit more of a detailed mesh here. And so then we can grab this. Now all of these interior faces are going to be a nightmare. So I'm going to clean some of those up if I can really quickly, just by, what's the best way to do this? If I want to grab an edge ring, I guess we'll just mask. So I'm going to go over here to my control brush, and we're just going to mask the bottom here. Like so. And then we'll control alt. Actually, you know what? We're going to hold control, go to auto masking, and we're going to turn on backface masking. So we're going to, and also I'm going to go to preferences, edit, align cursor to surface so my cursor isn't flip-flopping all over the place. I don't mind it when I'm doing hard surface like ZModeler stuff, but not a big fan of it while I'm just doing this kind of stuff. So, so with backface masking on, I'm not masking through the object here, and I guess I could turn off polyframe here. And it looks like on this one, let's go ahead and get rid of this one here. So what I'm basically doing is creating a ring of a polygroup ring that I can isolate, invert, and then do an auto groups, just so I can get rid of these interior faces from my ZRemesh. We want to make this an airtight mesh here. So we'll go ahead and connect those up, Control-Alt-Paint, Control-Alt-Tap to kind of sharpen that mask up, and then again hit Control-W to make those all one polygroup. We're going to Control-Shift, and we're going to grab all of these red ones, and now because we don't have a continuous mesh from the inside of the foot to the outside anymore, I think we should be able to do auto groups now. There we go. So now all those interior meshes are blue. So now we can get rid of blue, pink, delete hidden, close holes, and there we go. If we want to close holes manually, let's go ahead and delete hidden. Let's grab, we could get fancier, but let's see if this will work. So we'll go close convex hole on this one and this one. We're just using ZModeler, which for you guys will be BZM, and now we can just use ZModeler to kind of close those holes manually. And now we have this mesh. Now this mesh we can dynamesh. So if we go over here to turn off project, turn off blur, and just hit dynamesh, it should dynamesh just fine. Yeah. So let's up the resolution on that dynamesh just a bit. And the dynamesh resolution is probably going to be the same as the remesh. So like 170 would get us back where we are. We'll just dial in 216 here. Good enough. So we're starting kind of low. But now it's just a matter of getting these polygon meshes to this polygon mesh here. Now on these polygon meshes down here, I don't necessarily want to project those because I know on the original mesh it's a hole. So I'm going to isolate that polygroup, hit Control-W, and so now come on ZBrush. They are separate polygroups, but they look exactly the same. So I'm going to keep hitting Control-W until I get something different. There we go. So the pink ones I don't care about projecting. It's the yellow ones I'm worried about. So with both of these showing, I can do, I can go to Subtool. So just so you know, I'm going to go to Subtool, Project All, and I'm just going to do this in my custom menu here. If you want more info on custom menus and hotkeys, I'm just going to keep spamming this link here. Go to this link and go to Intro to ZBrush Part 2, and it'll walk you through all of that stuff. Using ZBrush for an architecture environment? Sure. I should bring it. One of my students, Cameron, was just recently doing some mock-ups using a bunch of stuff, but ZBrush is one of them, and doing these really cool thumbnails with like ships and railing and really cool set design like that. And but we can certainly talk about that in a second. So remesh and ZRemesh. Basically, remesh looks at. Good question. So we're going to go to cylinder here and make a polymesh 3D. And let's go ahead and grab the bottom of this one. We'll just delete it. So what this cylinder would do, if I went to geometry, ZRemesh, it's going to take whatever geometry I have, and we'll do same, adapt the size down to 0, and it will remesh that as new geometry. If I go to, ZRemesh, that new geometry. If I go to remesh, which is under subtool, so ZRemesh is under geometry because it actually replaces my geometry. So if I don't want to lose this, I'm going to want to duplicate this off and then do a ZRemesh, and then you can do project all to project it back to this original cylinder if you want to do that. Now with this one here, and it replaces the geometry, so that's why it's under the geometry tab. Remesh is under the subtool tab because, and it is symmetrical across the X, but you can turn that off. What remesh does is instead of making this new geometry with all sorts of different quads and stuff, remesh just throws like a dynamesh looking mesh. It just creates a dynamesh mesh around the object, and it actually goes through and does all of your surfaces. So it's basically, and if you look in here, when it gets to around these corners, it starts turning into triangles. But when you go to the top view, it looks very, very nice. If I go to the side view, it looks nice. But then as we transition over, what it's basically doing is, imagine a box, just like shadow box. You're projecting a resolution of a box to your object from all angles and creating geometry around the surface of your object. So instead of replacing the object, here's our original, here's our remesh. It's giving us basically a dynamesh looking skin around our object that we can then project to. So remesh, and it will do that with anything in your scene. So if we go delete here, anything that's visible, I should say. So we'll delete that. And you know what? Let's go ahead and cap this real quick. So we'll go to close convex hole. We'll just close that off. And I'm just going to go ahead and do an insert sphere, and we'll move this down. So here's another difference. So if I take these two objects and I duplicate this one off, and I'm in solo mode, so you don't see both of them, and I ZRemesh this thing, so we're going to go to geometry, ZRemesh. We'll do same, adapt size down to 0. That replaces this geometry with new quad geometry, and we go over ZRemesh stuff a lot in previous videos. And if you want to save the, let's go ahead and do a quick group by normal. So that'll be under your polygroup menu. If you do keep groups, smoothing down to 0 and ZRemesh will give me a little bit nicer result on that cylinder there. And of course you can do double resolution and it'll give you more resolution. If you want to get rid of some of this stuff, you can go to edge loop, delete loops, and that'll get rid of any extraneous loops, although we got rid of one of those. But anyways, it keeps the polygroups, it keeps the objects separate, and it ZRemeshes the objects that you see. However, and it gives it nice new clean quad topology. However, on this one, if I remesh it, it's going to just, whoops, okay, so we're still in solo mode here. If we remesh it, all it's going to do is cover it in a blanket of kind of a dynamesh or a unified mesh skin, which is fine because we can still, while we're out of solo mode here, I can still go to project all and just start projecting it back. It's going to have kind of a hard time, but that's what we're going to run into when we go here, is to get this projection back. So why didn't we ZRemesh the original sculpt? Well, we could have for sure. And the part of the problem is the head is separate, so we could ZRemesh that, and then we could ZRemesh the body and project those back and then close holes. So in fact, let's try doing that. I'm going to do a quick save so we can always get back to this point. And let's see if this will work. I think it'll, well, no, it should work fine. Let's run a ZRemesh operation. Now, I don't want to lose my original sculpt here, so I'm going to duplicate this off because ZRemesh is going to completely obliterate all of that stuff. So we'll go to ZRemesher. I'm going to leave the adaptive size alone. Target polygon count is fine. These are separate meshes, so I don't need to keep groups, and we'll just hit ZRemesh. And we'll let that run. If you have X symmetry turned on, if that's up in your transform menu, it will do a symmetrical sculpt. I think it goes negative X to positive X, so you obviously want to have X turned off here. How do I avoid getting spiral loops when I ZRemesh? It's actually pretty good. I know in previous versions before R7P3 that, yeah, when you do it as ZRemesh, you'd get spirals on your arms and fingers. It happens sometimes still, but it does a pretty good job. In order to really help it out, what you can do is either put, it's called ZBrush, it's the curve Z, let me show you where it is. Don't worry about that, we'll get that in a second. So if we go to ZRemesher guides here, you can use that to kind of draw rings around, or what I would prefer to do is usually go through here, like on the Thor body, for example. We'll go into solo mode. I would go through here and I would slice, like, okay, I don't want any spirals on his arm, so I'm going to slice here and then slice here. And then when I go to ZRemesh, I would say, just like I did previously on the cylinder, I'd go ZRemesh, keep groups, take your smooth groups down to 0. You don't want to smooth them. And that'll basically do the equivalent of putting a ZRemesher curve around these two edges. If you did want to put a ZRemesher curve, you could just isolate that, go to stroke, curve, functions, and then you could just frame your mesh with your border. And then, you know, ZRemesh would treat these curves as ZRemesher curves to guide that. But of course, just having polygroup at borders there does the exact same thing. Keep groups on, and in that way, it'll go from here to here, and it shouldn't do spirals in between there. I say shouldn't, probably won't. But now we have our ZRemesh body. Now it was having a little bit of trouble because there's a lot of like little squirrely things happening in this original body here. I could go in and smooth that out. I couldn't dynamesh it. It was crashing on dynamesh. So not ideal, although I could try. Okay, let's do a quick save on this one. We're going to try all sorts of stuff today. I'm going to grab this body here, Control-Shift-A, and we're going to split this off, and let's just try dynameshing this. Okay, so that worked. Let's dynamesh it at a higher resolution. Let's go delete hidden. Whenever dynamesh does something weird, try deleting hidden. There we go. So on this dynamesh, it dynameshed it just fine without losing any detail. So that's an option. And let's go to this head. Ooh, we had a little extra piece there. That doesn't help. So let's take this head here. We're going to go to delete hidden. And let's try dynameshing this thing. So turn off project, turn off blur, crank my resolution up. And I'm at a resolution like 1024. Okay, so the head's having the problem. Good to know. So we might be able to get away with dynameshing the body and having that one continuous mesh, remeshing the head, capping it, projecting, and then putting those together. A lot of different ways to skin this cat. And I think that'll be a little bit more helpful. So what I'm going to do is, because this ZRemesh is okay, we can work with this. It's just not ideal. So let's go ahead and let's delete that for now. Our remesh is kind of sitting out here. That resolution right here is going to be a problem around his head. So we might remesh his head and his body separately because that's going to be a pain. But I think this will work better. So let's go ahead and grab his body here. Control-Shift-A. And we will split hidden. And we'll move his head to the top here. And I'm going to get rid of, again, those two extra pieces here. So I'm going to grab his little piece of his head, Control-Shift-A. And let's go ahead and delete hidden. And now what we're going to do is do another quick save. Oh, and by the way, if you hover over this, you'll see the quick save is hotkey for that is 9. If you hold down Control, it'll give you even more information on that. Same thing with anything in ZBrush. You just hover over it. It'll give you the hotkey and the name, and then you hold down Control. It'll give you more information. So where do I work? I work at Certain Affinity in Austin, Texas. Game company. Oh, thank you for watching my tutorials. Glad they're helping out. How do you spread selection after selecting a small part and hiding the rest of the mesh? Do you use Dynamesh Master? I don't use Dynamesh Master, but definitely check that out. That's a very useful tool. I think Joseph Drust made that tool. A couple guys at work use it. I just kind of dial in the numbers. I don't Dynamesh that often, so and I Dynamesh a lot, but not anything super specific. So I can usually just eyeball it. But Dynamesh Master is a plugin. You can Google that. Dynamesh Master ZBrush Central should take you to the page, or his Gumroad, ZBrush Joseph Drust Gumroad. So how I'm doing that is just you can grab a little piece, and I'm doing Control-Shift-A, which is under Visibility. You're going to see Grow All is Control-Shift-A, and that just grows all parts. It's a little bit faster than like making a polygroup and Control-Shift clicking sometimes, especially if you don't necessarily have a polygroup. So we know Dynamesh is going to work on this one here. So I'm going to turn off project, turn off blur. I'm going to crank that up to like 1300 resolution. And that'll go ahead and close my holes. We didn't lose any perceptible detail there, I don't think. So this will be a much nicer mesh to work with, a nice contiguous mesh. And also Dynamesh was nice enough to polygroup my holes that it created separately, so I can still go in and we can just grab this and project later on if we need to. Now the Thor head is giving us a little bit of trouble, so I'm going to go into select lasso here. I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff here we probably don't need, and anything that's going to cause it to kind of be a pain when it goes to like close holes or something. I'm gonna take away some of the ambiguity of this mesh here. Yeah, there's a hole there that it could have a problem with. And really any of this detail stuff, we can get that back. I'm not really losing too much here. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a delete hidden. Now on this one, what we can do is we can ZRemesh this piece here and then start projecting and then close the holes too. So I'm gonna duplicate this off. And we'll just ZRemesh this separately. So I'm going to go down here to geometry, ZRemesher. We don't need to keep groups on because it's just one poly group. Target polygon count of 5 is fine. We're going from 350,000 down to almost nothing. Adaptive size, I'll put this down at like 25. Basically what adaptive size does, and I can bring in a marvelous designer mesh to kind of demonstrate this better. But basically, if adaptive size is down at 0, it's going to give you nice, even quads, but it will tend to disregard surface changes. So I kind of want to keep the surface changes in here because it'll try and build edges where they need to go. And on an organic mesh, it works really well. But the target polygon count is probably going to escalate, but I really don't care about target polygon count because this isn't for a game res. It's just for getting this detail back onto another mesh. So let's just ZRemesh this thing. Let that go. Let's see. But can you grow it slowly by close geometry? Oh, yeah. So when this is done, it's just under visibility, and it's Control-Shift-X is the hotkey for grow your selection. Control-Shift-S is shrink your selection. So you can grab a piece, or you can, yeah, it's visibility. So you can grab a piece and then grow it. And you can just keep hitting that and hitting that and hitting that, and that'll kind of grow it. I just do grow all, so if I do an example here, we can do this, and Control-Shift-X expands it, and you can just keep doing this until it gets all the way there, or you can just do Control-Shift-A, or you can grab a piece of it and do Control-Shift-S, and that'll shrink. So either one of those. And again, that's just under your visibility menu here. Hide, show, grow all, shrink, all that good stuff. Outer ring. So now we have a mesh here that's much lower fidelity that we can kind of work with here. And you know what? I'm going to clean up this border a little bit. So I'm going to go, and I'm going to ZRemesh this again, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, what am I looking for here? Masking. And I'll show you why I'm doing this in just a minute. So I'm going to go to masking, mask by feature border. So that's going to mask my border out. I can grow this if I want to. So I can grow my mask. Here we'll grow it twice, and then we'll invert that mask. If I want to tighten this mask up a little bit, I can Control-Alt-Tap, and I can sharpen it up, or I can just do Sharpen Mask, and that'll just kind of get these isolated. And then I can go to my deformation menu, and I can do like a polish or a smooth or a polish by features, and just kind of smooth that border ring out. Of course, you don't have to grow it or shrink it or tighten it up. You can just do your border, mask your border, invert that. But the reason I'm doing that is just so when I go to close this hole, it's a little bit nicer. Now, because I've ZRemeshed this, I've lost a little bit of detail. So again, you can go to geometry or, project all and just project that back if you want to make sure you got all this stuff. And I'm going to make sure this is all one contiguous mesh too. Control-Shift-A, delete hidden. Okay, so there was some weirdo geometry just hanging out, which I didn't like. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth this down too. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to kill that completely. Anything that's giving me problems here, I can just go ahead and delete hidden. And you know what? Let's sew this up. Let's sew this up manually. I'm going to go to my Z Modeler brush, BZM. I'm going to delete a single poly here, because if I close holes, it's going to close all the bottom holes and any of that stuff. And I'm just going to make sure that I go to bridge, edges, and I can just quickly just stitch this thing up like so. A little bit of Z Modeler work never killed anybody. And then we can just do Control-W, make it all one poly group, smooth this out. We'll grab that detail later. It doesn't need to be built in. And now that I've got that new border edge, you know how it gets kind of crumbly along that border edge? It's not a huge deal, but if you wanted to, you could go ahead and do geometry, ZRemesher. We'll do same. and that'll just give me a little bit nicer geometry around that border there. So if I did want to, I can just make this one contiguous mesh by going to close. Let's do a concave hole. And let's do a quick save while we're thinking about it. So we'll close concave hole. So convex hole would just do to a single poked face. Concave hole will give me a little bit more of a sculptable mesh here. So now I can kind of take this and we can kind of just give ourselves a little bit of breathing room. Make sure there's no errors going on in here. So one nice contiguous mesh here. So we've got head and hole. So what I want to do now is get that detail back onto this head mesh. I don't care about this hole, so I'm going to isolate just that head polygroup, and I'm going to go to Subtool, Project All, and then we're going to bring this back. I'm going to go to Crease menu, and I'm going to crease PG. Oops. So that way, as I'm subdividing this, it'll keep this edge nice and creased. It won't lose any, it won't average any vertices there. So we've subdivided that. No, we just creased it. So now I'm going to go Control D, which is going to give us geometry subdivisions. And I'm going to isolate this one, and I'm going to Project All, bring that back. And you can see, and also, just as long as their eyeballs are showing, I can go into solo mode and see how it's doing. It looks like it's picking up the detail just fine. So I'm going to, isolate this one again. Wait, Control D, isolate this one again, Project All, bring everything back. And one more time, we'll do Control D, isolate this one, and we'll do Project All. And the reason I'm projecting all just with this polygroup is because I don't want the whole projecting to anything in particular. So now we can do a comparison between the two. So here's our original scan, and then here's our Z project, and it looks like it grabbed all that detail just fine. And even better, if I go down here, I have all of these subdivisions that can just, you can go down and sculpt in this subdivision and then continue to sculpt up and refine. And then also, if we go down to subdivision level 4 in polyframe, we have nice even quads here. Not too shabby of a surface to sculpt on. So that's one option just in general. But the reason we did that is so that we could dyno resolution here, but the head is much higher resolution. So let's go ahead and do a quick save. How did I open the Modify Topology tab? Is that under Modify Topology? Oh, so here's Modify Topology. Under Geometry, Modify Topology. This is just a custom menu. So if you go to here and you go to Intro to ZBrush Part 2, it'll walk you through hotkeys and custom menus and all that good stuff. Sometimes Project All causes some bad geo. How do you fix that besides smoothing? Yes, so we're probably going to run into that, and that would be using just a sneak peek. BZP is using the Z project brush to clean up any detail. So this one projected fine, luckily. So, okay, let's take a breather here. And really, I'm doing this by the seat of my pants. It's not like I'm going off a document or anything. So there might be a more elegant way to, arrive at all these different solutions. But I think this will work fine. And so now that this is all closed off, this will dynamesh fine. So if I merge these down and then dynamesh, I think it'll do fine. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull this back in just a bit here, and also preferences, edit, turn off align cursor to surface. I'm just going through and again just removing any ambiguity from the mesh here. Gets a little squirrely up in there, but that's okay. We can clean that up later. Okay, so turn off draw. We got this. So now what we got is this mesh here, and if I dynamesh these together at a high enough resolution, I won't lose anything. So let's do a quick save here, and I'm going to, let's merge these down, and that's going to be under your merge menu here. Merge, I got a hotkey for merge down. It's Alt E or Control E, I forget. Whatever I use in Photoshop. It's all muscle memory. I don't actually use my brain when I sculpt. So we got these together, so now I should be able to dynamesh these together. If I want to play it safe, I can duplicate this off, or not play it safe, but just have a point to go back to. And let's turn off project, turn off blur. The reason I'm turning off project, not that I don't want that detail back, you know what, it just takes a little bit longer, so I'm trying to dial in the resolution. Okay, so we did lose a little bit of detail on that dynamesh. We don't want to do that, so I'm going to crank that resolution on that dynamesh up. And kind of dial it in. Yeah, we're still losing a little bit. Let's go all the way up, turn off blur, dynamesh. Now, with that dynamesh, and I don't have dynamesh master, so I can't just plug it in. I can You know, so there's my resolution capped out at 4096. I can go in here to deformation size and just go up 100. So if I go size XYZ up 100 and then dynamesh again, that'll give me more of a dynamesh resolution just because there's more area. If you go to Enter to ZBrush Part 1 on this playlist, I'm going to keep spamming it. Spam. If you go to Enter to ZBrush Part 1 here, that'll go over dynamesh and all the dynamesh options and how dynamesh and all that stuff works together. So now we've dynameshed this thing together. It's all one contiguous mesh here. So if I hit Control W, it'll just make it all one polygroup. And now when I ZRemesh this, it'll be one nice contiguous mesh. And if we want to get this back down to our original, let's go ahead and take our size back down to -100. There we go. So one nice contiguous mesh. All the holes are closed. You know, and there's some squirrely stuff going on here. Let's undo that here. Let's grab this polygroup here and this polygroup here. There's a purple polygroup hanging out. I want to delete that. And also, before I ZRemesh, I do kind of want to clean some of this stuff up. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and grab our select lasso. And any of these like really thin meshes here, I'm going to get rid of. And really, if we're ZRemeshing this thing, we don't even need this bottom polygon here, so we can go ahead and kill that actually. So a little bit of cleanup work, and this is just like photo, basic photo scan cleanup. If you want, you don't really need the mud around his feet probably, so we can. Mud's pretty easy to recreate. I'm assuming. I'm not a traditional sculptor. I'd like to be. I love watching traditional sculptors work. It's probably my favorite thing to do. But I am not. We use Chavant NSP and maquettes and stuff when we're in my anatomy class at Gemini. But a traditional sculptor I am not. Okay, so we've got these pieces here. I'm going to go ahead and delete hidden. And now if I do an auto groups or just a little bit fast, I'm going to grab this one, do Control Shift A. And now I can just do a delete hidden. And now when I ZRemesh, it'll leave us holes on the bottom of the feet, but that's really fine. Oh, shoot. I forgot I didn't. I forgot I had a poly group for the head still. Damn it. There we go. Okay, so I need all of these together. So I'm going to grab this polygroup here and this polygroup here. And you know what? Let's go ahead. We'll grab all these crumblies too. All right, so that'll be delete hidden. Now I'm going to hit Control W. Make sure I don't lose anything. Always be aware of what you're deleting. Sorry about that, guys. And now we can go through really quickly and get rid of all this stuff. Because again, the ZRemesh I'm making and we're projecting back to doesn't need all this stuff. Now, you could just dynamesh this thing and start sculpting. It's not a huge deal. But the question was, making a watertight mesh and projecting detail back. So we'll go ahead and do that. So we've already got to the point where it's sculptable with dynamesh at least. But we're going to go ahead and make this a little bit more cleaned up. And we'll use ZRemesh too, because why not? Okay, so now I can go delete hidden. Whew. Okay, one contiguous mesh, all our details back. Our original Thor body is this size because we sized him up one. That's okay. If we want to match that, we can go ahead and size him back down. We sized him up for the dynamesh resolution, so we'll size him back down. And so now those two should match up. So here's our original scan. We go into solo mode. Original scan. Here's our dynamesh that's a little bit cleaned up. And now we can just ZRemesh this and start projecting that back. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to take this one. We'll go to Geometry, ZRemesh. Adaptive size at 25 is fine, I think. And we'll do a quick save. And we will now ZRemesh that. Cool. My computer. So here's a little bit let me see. So if you go to that link I've been spamming, it's kind of buried, so I'll just link you directly to the video. I've got this video here as my workspace setup, and I'm still using this computer. It's getting a little long in the tooth. It's just a laptop. Let's see, what are the hardware? I'm just using an Alienware laptop because I'm not going to build my own laptop. I would build my own PC, but my laptops, I just got to buy those. So it's a Alienware laptop, i7, 32 gig of RAM, NVIDIA GeForce 770 mobile. And if you look at the description, there's more information in there. The reason I use a laptop is because I have to go do demos at places. I have to go teach students at Gemini, and I always have to be able to take my work anywhere I go. So I have to kind of use a laptop. I would love to get just a beast of a machine. I'm eyeballing Threadripper for that. Just to kind of set up a beast machine at home and do a lot of rendering and work on. But I always need something to be able to take somewhere and demo. So I kind of need a beefy laptop too. This laptop is like 3 or 4 years old. It's just been a workhorse. No complaints. I've updated it slightly with SSDs all over the place because I am a very impatient person. So anyway, we got our body here. So here's our scan data, and now here's our ZRemesh body. So now it's just a simple matter of, and again, you can go to projectile. I'm just going to use my projectile button here, and as long as both of these are on, so we can see both of them, we can just go to projectile, and that just projects our ZRemesher body back to this body. And you're going to see it did a pretty good job. Before you do that, if you want to have one contiguous mesh, you're probably going to want to go down here and close these holes. So let's just do that masking trick again, kind of clean this edge up a little bit. So we'll go here, and we'll go to, I even have a macro for this. I can just run my macro that does a polished polygroup border. The ZBrush guys gave me that. But again, you can go mask by features, mask by border, control tab to invert that mask, and then ZRemesh again, just to get a nicer edge ring around that. So you can take your original ZRemesh body here, like so, and now we can just do another ZRemesh. Under geometry, ZRemesh, you see it's right there. And we'll do ZRemesh same, because that's fine. And then we'll just hit ZRemesher. That'll give me a little bit nicer edge rings around the bottom hole there. Let's see. Keep losing symmetry when Z modeler moves vertex infinity. I'll try that. I'm not sure why it would be doing that. I'll try that in a minute. Let's say you have pants sculpting and the outside face is overlapping an inside face. What would you do? Pants sculpting and the outside face is overlapping the inside face. I would try and separate your outside and inside poly groups if you can. You can also go into your sculpting brush and go into auto masking, turn on back face, and that way you can kind of go to your interior faces of your pants and sculpt those in or inflate those in. And then while you're sculpting on the outside, turn on back face on thin meshes. That's why on pants I usually tend to cap instead of giving thickness, because it's just a pain to work on those thin meshes. So I cap when I can, but on a tank top, you're not able to kind of do that. So that's kind of a pain. So anyway, we've got this new mesh here, and let's go ahead and close these holes. If we do this is going to be a problem because it's going to want to close here and close here. It's not going to know how to bridge those very well, so I'm going to help it out with Z Modeler. I'm just going to go through here. I'm going to hover over this edge, and I'm going to go to Bridge Edge. I'm going to bridge this edge. And just again, to help it out some more, I'm going to bridge this edge. So now if I run a close holes operation, it'll just go ahead and close those convex holes. I can make that geometry as nice or as crappy as I want to. I think crappy will be fine for what I'm looking for. So now we can just project this mesh back to our original mesh here. So again, it's just going to be a simple matter of, we got both of these showing, so I can isolate. Well, I wouldn't isolate using that one, because a feature of the lasso brush is we can go Control Shift and grab an edge, and it'll select an edge ring. It's a feature, it's useful, but Select Rectangle doesn't do that. So if you're having a problem with that, just use Select Rectangle. So anyway, we've got both of these showing. If I isolate this top polygroup here, mesh that top polygroup here, you can just go to Subtool, Project All. I'll go ahead and project that detail back. Yay, and it just seemed like it did fine. Control Shift to bring everything back, including those holes. And then again, we can go to Crease Polygroup to keep those edges nice and clean. And that's of course under your crease menu, crease PG. And then again, we can, man, that's projecting just great. I'm just amazed at its projection capabilities. So, but we'll do cleanup stuff too. So we'll go here. We're in solo mode here. Now, they're both showing, both the eyeballs are on, but you can be in solo mode and still project to something that's visible. So you don't have to have it looking at it on your screen. So it's just a little bit easier. So while I'm looking at this thing, I can go Control D, get more resolution. So now we're at the 484,000. Our original mesh here is 1.4 million points. So we'll get back up to that just to make sure we're not losing too much. And we can go Control Shift, isolate this top one, and we'll do Project All. Another thing you could do with ZRemesher is you can control the density of your mesh. So if you wanted more polygons in the face and like less polygons in the back or something, or more polygons in the hands, what you could do is when you're ZRemeshing, go over here to ZRemesher and turn on Use Poly Paint, and there's a color density, and you can change this to like 2, and that'll be 2x, and then you can paint where you want 2x to go, and then you can put it at 0.25, paint where you want less density to go, and when you ZRemesh, it'll redistribute your polygons to put more detail where you want it and less detail where you don't. In this case, it's all even, which I'm assuming is fine. And so now we'll go back into solo mode here. So we've got, this is our original mesh, and now I'm going to go to solo. Here's our project. We're still losing a little bit of detail here, and because we have less polygons here. So let's go ahead and we'll isolate. Oh, we got everything back, so we'll do Control D one more time. And now we're up to 1.9 million. I'm going to isolate this top one, and then we'll just run a project all. Let's see. You can, okay, so if you do use loose symmetry, you can mirror and weld, which works if you don't have subdivision history. If you do have subdivision history, you can go to Deformation, Smart Resim, mask the half of object you want to keep, and then resim. Cool. Everybody good? A macro is just something you can record. It's just like recording an action in Photoshop. You can do a series of events that you can record in ZBrush and then save that out as a macro. And then when you want to run that again, just go to your macro menu, and it'll just run your action script basically. If you were to change the pose with the lower resolution dynamesh and have him lean on one leg more, kick the leg out, the projection will not be distorted. The projection won't pick up unless your original high-res mesh moved as well, but I will, thanks for bringing that up. So what we're going to do is, it looks like we got our detail back. So if I go into solo mode here, we're losing a little bit, but honestly, like we're not losing much. We're losing some of the scraggly stuff. It seems to be picking and choosing what it wants to sculpt to, but we can get that back. It's not a big deal. I think we're in really good shape here. So I'm going to hit Control Shift, bring this back. And now we've got this mesh here. So speaking of posing, if we did want to correct any pose information on here, the great thing about ZRemesh and projection is we can just go down to subdivision level 1 to this low res. Well, it's not really low res, it's still pretty high res, but you can go down to like super low res if you ZRemesh and then just keep projecting back up. You can go like 8 or 9 subdivisions down if you want to. But now what we can do is go into mask lasso, and we can either manually just kind of go through here with mask lasso and then control click to blur it out. You can go to your masking menu and blur that out, invert that mask, and now when I go to rotate this around, all of that detail is going to follow. So if I go back up, here's all my detail back, and then it's just a matter of corrective sculpting. Now, if you're going to be corrective sculpting, stay as low as you can, and then go like, okay, when I move the leg up, or the oblique's going to kind of go back a little bit, or the gluteus medius is going to pop, or any of that stuff, any butt fixes you want to do, and then you can just keep sculpting up through your subdivision levels. So having a low resolution cage basically for your subdivision level 1 is great for corrective posing, and then just going back up and getting all that detail back. Now, I don't know if you wanted that leg move, so we'll go ahead and move that back real quick. I'm undoing now. You can also just drag through your history slider. If you also wanted to move something, you can hit R, or any of these move, scale, and rotate, W-E-R, and just kind of drag down. You can kind of drag down to the elbow, and then you can like position this like a bone, and move this around. Of course, you probably want to clean it up a little bit here. There we go. And again, if you want to blur, just Control Tap. That'll kind of blur it out. Now, if you are going to be doing any of this type of stuff, you'll want to go in and sculpt corrected blend shapes with a brachioradialis, and the elbow needs to pop a little bit more, and the bicep, all that good stuff. But easy enough to fix. So that's one of the uses of using ZRemesher. So we've got our low res cage here. So now let's go and see if we need to fix anything. So if we go here, we have our original mesh here, and then our original scan data here. And if we go into solo mode and switch between it, you're going to see some of this stuff is a little bit different. And honestly, I almost like the ZRemesh better. But let's say, for example, because what can happen a lot of times on this type of stuff here, let's go to, I'm going to go to my BLA, that's my layer brush. And a lot of times you'll get stuff that looks like this, where it's like, oh, it kind of, it projected, but then it like missed some spots, you know? So, which is fine. Project-all is going to get you 99% there. And then to clean this stuff up, what you can do is just go to BZP or ZProject brush, turn off RGB. Z sub by default is set to 50. You can crank it up to 100 if you want. And you can just go through here, and with both of these showing, if you don't hold down Alt and you just project, it'll just project back, and it's camera based, so you'll want to project, move your camera so you're looking straight down at it and just project that back to your mesh. And you go into solo mode, it's just projecting straight back to your mesh, like so. If for any reason, let's go to BLA, we'll go to our layer brush here. I'm gonna hold down Alt, and let's say it missed a couple of embedded spots like this. In that case, what you're going to want to do is go, brush Z, project BZP, or you can save a hotkey to that if you use it a lot, or you can throw it down here. Here's some stuff I use a little bit, so you can use a custom menu to do that. And that's just preferences, config, enable, customize, Control Alt, drag the stuff around. So with embedded problems, what you're going to want to do is BZP, Z project brush, and then instead of not holding, you're going to want to hold down Alt, and that'll pull up to the underlying mesh. So now you go into solo mode, and we just pulled up. So it's basically, for this stuff, you want to position your camera and then project back to your mesh, and then hold down Alt, and that'll project up to your mesh. And then when you're done, all that cleanup work's been done. Now this little piece here is in the original scan, so that's not anything you can fix with ZProject. So those are those two methods. Now, caveat, if you have a symmetrical mesh, you probably don't want to have X turned on, because if you have something over here and something over here and you're using the ZProject brush, ZProject will pull all the way through your mesh and you'll see things skewing. Another reason, not for the X symmetry, but one thing you want to watch out for is we'll use our layer brush again. So with layer brush, we can kind of build up something. Let's say we have a huge projection problem here. So I'm going to go to BZP, and if I go straight down, I can project that straight down to my mesh, no problem. However, if I'm like over here and I'm using like projection brush, I'm like, let's project it. What it's doing is projecting camera base, so it's going straight back from my camera and projecting that geometry back. So if I'm like over here kind of skewed, it'll look like it's doing a good job, but when you go into your solo, you're going to see you're getting some really nasty floppy geometry that's like now overlapping itself. So that's the only reason I say choose your camera to look straight down and project straight down, because that's what it's doing. So a little bit of cleanup. ZProject, and again, we went over a ton of different methods: Remesh, ZRemesh, dynamesh, a combination of ZRemesh and dynamesh to get things clean. And now I have a pretty clean sculptable mesh. So in this case, if I go back to the original sculpt, that's just a straight line. This didn't pick it up so well. If you wanted to, you could Z-project that line in here, but that type of stuff I wouldn't really bother with, So, I don't know, pretty clean, pretty decent. Oh, thanks for showing up, Mike. Glad the videos are helping you out. Uh-oh. Yeah, so if we go to the, just like when we were looking at here, if we go back to our original sculpt here, and we go into solo mode, it's like, this thing here, and so this thing, we probably should have cleaned that up as well before I started. because I'm assuming he doesn't really need that. So one thing we can do, let's try this. Let's do a quick save because this will work just fine. But let's go down to subdivision level 1, and we're going to freeze our subdivision levels, and we're going to go to Control Shift. I'm going to grab Select Lasso, and I'm going to see if I can Select Lasso this ring out of here. Let's grab, you know what? Let's grab this one. And we'll do Control Shift X to expand. And let's go to Delete Hidden, Close Holes, and then we'll unfreeze. And what that should do is just reproject all of our meshes back to what they were originally and allow us to modify geometry on the lowest subdivision level. So with freeze, you can add horns and all of this crazy stuff, and as long as those are on a separate area there, you can go through, clean up your low res, and then reproject high. You can do this all manually as well. You can go, duplicate off your low res, make any changes you want, and then just project back through manually. Freeze subdivision is just another method to do that. This takes a little bit longer, so I'm not a huge fan of it. I also like having the control of just doing it manually anyways. But you can see here we've modified the lowest resolution, and we got our high res back. So this way we can just go through and we can just use our ZRemesher here. We can change this, and we can go ahead and knock this back, or any changes we want to do on the lowest resolution mesh. Just go ahead and smooth these things out if you'd like. This line along his body, and you don't have to do it subdivision level 1. You can do it on subdivision level 2 if you want a little bit more control here. Let's go through and clean this up. Clean this up here. And then as we subdivide, you'll get some of the artifacts back, but just a matter of going in. Using a little bit of smooth. You don't need this line here. So, yeah, not too shabby. And if you want to, these are still their own separate polygroup, which I kind of like. This one doesn't have to be its own separate polygroup, so we can go ahead and isolate the bottom of his feet polygroups here, invert that, Control W, make that all one polygroup, and then we're good. I think that'll work. So I'm going to go ahead and save this off. So we've got this one. This is our original scan. I can leave that in there, not a huge deal. And then our original head we can leave in there. I'm going to shoot this one to the top, hold down Shift, and bent up arrow moves it all the way to the top of your subtool. And I'll just do a quick save as on our desktop. Call it Thor Remesh. And there's the Thor head. And here's another cool head that we can, and this one would be a lot easier, I think. So if we go into, turn our floor on, and make sure he is Z forward, but he's looking at the ground. So in this case, this will be a much easier work flow here. So we can just go through here, and hell, we can even rotate him this way if we want him looking straight on. Now, if you did want to, for whatever reason, make this perfectly symmetrical, this is where you could go into like mirror and weld, and you'd want to line up that mid plane very carefully here before you did something like that. And you can move it left or right if you're losing too much of his head here. You could do that. So, but of course people aren't symmetrical, so you probably don't want to do that. Now to clean this one up, it'd just be a simple matter of grabbing this little piece here, Control Shift A, and that'll grow all contiguous vertices. So all of this garbage here will be deleted if you do Geometry Modify Topology Delete Hidden. These edges down here, I should have gotten rid of this. Oh, that's just barely hanging on there, isn't it? Let's do a little manual cleanup along these edges here. We'll delete hidden. And again, I really don't care about those edges, so what I can do is just duplicate this dude off, and we'll go ahead and, I'm just going to run my macro. Polish your polygroup borders. You can mask by border. Actually, let's do a little bit better job than that. So we'll go mask by border, and we're going to grow that mask, and we're going to invert that mask, and we're just going to do a deformation, polish by features, open hole, and that'll just polish that polygroup border out a bit. You're losing some detail along that border, but oh well. And any help I can give it, I will. We'll go ahead and delete hidden. So now on this duplicate here, we can just ZRemesh this. or you can close holes and dynamesh it. But if you want to work with lower subdivision history, which I think is useful when you're dialing in details and stuff, we can just go to ZRemesher, depth of size down to maybe 22, target polygon count of 5 is fine. We'll just ZRemesh this. And hopefully it has some, I feel weird saying this, but hopefully it has some, what's the word I'm looking for? Hopefully it has some errors so we can fix those. Cool. A wire had to be used to hold the clay on the base. Good to know. Yeah. So yeah, the thing on his back was, yeah. So when you have an armature, it'll be like a post and a little arm will come out, and that goes into like usually the lower back or the middle of your mesh, and then you have a wire armature that you can twist off and stuff. So that's where that little pokey thing was. So now we have our ZRemesh here. And now it's just a matter of if we did want to close holes, let's make sure we're just getting contiguous meshes here. Cool. We'll just do a quick close hole operation. And if you want to, we can do, let's do Control Shift, and that'll put in another edge ring. And then we will scale this in a little bit. Give us a little bit of breathing room here. Let's do E, which is scale. And I'm going to do Control Shift. That'll give us our edge ring. That's what I'm looking for. And now we can use Move to kind of bring this in a little bit, and then we can kind of pull this down a bit. And now what I can do is grab this one here, do Control Shift X to expand, Control W make Control W. Oh, Control W make that all one poly group. So now all my clean mesh that I want to project to is here, and all this I don't really care about. So now what I can do, go out of solo mode. We have our guy here. We have them both visible. Go into solo mode again because it's still visible. It'll still project. Isolate that one. Subtool, project all. And go ahead and increase our poly group. Control D to am I still got something masked here? Unmask. Okay, let's do this again. Increase poly group. Isolate. Project all. Control D, isolate. Let's go ahead and grab this one. Project all. Control D, isolate, project all. And then bring everything back. And we'll do one more. Control D, isolate, project all. So now we have one contiguous mesh with subdivision history. So if we want to dial down and sculpt at a lower resolution, we can. And we'll give this a minute, and then we'll check for any errors we might have. So here's our new one. And if we're in solo mode, here's our original scan. Here's our new one. It did a damn good job. Not a whole lot. We're losing a little bit of resolution here, it looks like, which again is mostly just a resolution issue. We can just subdivide that one more, because this one here is 600,000 points. Now we're up to 1.9. Not ideal, but oh well. We'll do another projectile. Good morning, Hired Gun. Thanks for showing up. Axel, how do you deal with a hollow object when Dynamesh makes artifacts on the thinner spots? That would be, yeah, if you've got a thin object, yeah, I'll show you that in just a second. But basically, when you have a thin object and you're sculpting, and sometimes if you have backface masking off, it'll pull through your back faces, and then when you Dynamesh, it looks webbed. So one important thing is just to make sure you have backface masking on for all your brushes here. Let's make sure we're in good shape here. So we're in solo mode. Scan. New one. Don't need that scan anymore. I guess we can leave it in there. There we go. So now we've got this thing. We have subdivision levels. We can drop back down and just sculpt our way up. Again, any fixes you want to make, you can just use your Z project brush. Let's see if we got any. Yeah, no real errors here, man. Good enough. So anyway, Z project brush and just sculpt out any problems you might have. Another reason to have, instead of just going to a super high resolution dynamesh in sculpting, is the ability to, you know, if I hold down shift and we smooth, it's going to be like, oh, okay, I want to smooth this thing out. And you're like, oh, smooth, smooth, smooth. Oh, it takes forever. You can go over here to your smooth brush modifiers, and you're going to see a weighted smooth mode. If you go to 1, it's stronger. Or you can just go to brush, smooth, stronger. If you don't have that, you can go into your brushes here with ZBrush, and if you go to the smooth folder, You've got smooth, all sorts of different smooths in here, and all these different smooth brushes are just basically smooth modifiers being adjusted here. But with smooth stronger, you can smooth stronger, but it's still a little bit limiting. What I'd rather do is go down to like subdivision level 2 and just, you know, smooth out any major stuff I don't like or, you know, shouldn't be there, like probably this clay chunk here. Go ahead and get rid of that. And then as I subdivide up, it's just so much easier at a lower resolution to smooth those things out than it is to try and wrangle those things on the highest resolution. You know, like trying to do this, just go down a couple and then smooth it out. Much easier. And then you go back up, super easy to just kind of clean that up. So as far as the thin meshes we were talking about, if we have, for example, a cube 3D, make it polymesh, go ahead and shrink this down, and we'll go ahead and turn off project, turn off blur. We'll change this to like 100 dynamesh. There we go. So now you're sculpting away. You're using like clay buildup because you're feeling it, and you're just going like, yeah, we're gonna make something super cool. Actually, let's turn on X symmetry here. So now it'd be like, okay, yeah, we're gonna sculpt something super cool here. We're gonna do like some sort of cool skull, and it's gonna be coming through at you, because I always just sculpt skulls, because why not? And then you go and it's like, okay, let's keep working. I'm gonna dynamesh. And you're like, why would you do that to me? It's because it's pulling through your mesh here. So now you could make a separate polygroup for this back plane and hide it while you're sculpting, but also what might be better, just to keep you safe, is again, go over here to your auto masking, turn on backface. And now this isn't global. Like mask by polygroups is global, so if you turn that on, all of your brushes will respect polygroups. Backface is not, so you can be using it for clay tubes. And if you switch over to your clay brush, wait, did we turn it off for clay tubes? Okay, so I guess we turned it on for clay tubes earlier. Standard brush here, it's like, okay, now we're using our standard brush here. That's gonna pull through. So make sure you turn on backface masking for any brushes you're gonna use. And now you're free to make that super cool skull we're gonna make. So I'm gonna crank up my Z intensity here. We're gonna change our lazy radius up to 15 and then hit L to get out of that. And we got smooth stronger, so now we can just go through here and like start sculpting our cool, crazy, weirdo sculpting. Now it's dynamesh, so if I need more room on here, I can just take this and just move this down, re-dynamesh, and now I'm off to the races here. So we can go into our clay brush here, sculpt this out. Now we can do like a wall relief or something. Go in here, and we'll do like, punch these back. Go in and like sculpt this out. Oh, another thing he did bring up was eyeballs. So if we go in here and it's like, okay, now we're sculpting, but in order to make this a little more usable, which this is our ZRemesh one, what I probably would do is, you know, I much prefer working in subtools. Now, I won't be able to insert a mesh onto this object because it has subdivision history. So what I'm going to do instead is you can delete lower, insert, and then reconstruct subdivision levels if you want, but I usually like to have, I'll insert, like, it doesn't really matter, a sphere. And I can hit F to frame. And what I like to do is take this sphere, I'm going to do deformation size just to scale that sphere down. It's just basically a null object. I mean, it's not, I guess, technically null because it exists, but it's an object I'm not really using. So I'm just going to kind of bury that inside my guy, and that's just going to be a sphere with no subdivision history. So now if I want to go to like BI brush insert sphere, now you can insert spheres for the eyeballs. I have a custom menu here, so I'm going to just do an insert sphere of 12, and we can kind of just plop that in there and then move it back. Let's kind of reposition these eyeballs here. And if I want to make sure they're the same size, should be a simple, and you can also, if you want this to be like a pupil, you could rotate this around so it doesn't look wonky. You could just do Control Shift and copy one over, and then you can just move and rotate this thing back into place here. And same thing for the teeth, same thing for the tongue. And the reason you might want to do that, in fact, we'll steal, maybe we can steal somebody else. You know what? We're going to steal some teeth. And the reason you might want to do that is just to make it easier on you. So if we want to do teeth, do I have good teeth I can steal? The only one I can think of off the top of my head is a skeleton here. So I'm going to grab the skeleton. This is a female skeleton, but her teeth will be fine to use as Thor's teeth. Don't tell anybody. So we're going to do Control-Shift. We're going to grab all these pieces here, Control-Shift-A, and we're going to delete hidden. And if you want to, you can use the skull to kind of position these teeth. So I'm going to go to B, create Insert Mesh, New. Go back to our Thor sculpt here, wherever he is. There we go. So now he's got eyeballs. The eyeballs don't have subdivision history. And again, these eyeballs are being inserted on this mesh. So if I want to, I can just do a split mask points. Or I'm sorry, we can do a group split, or we can just isolate these and do a split hidden. That's under your subtool split menu. So now those are its own polygroup. And then I can just go click my null object again. If you want to, you can rename it. And now we have teeth to insert. So what I can do is with my brush insert, I can just grab this skull out. And you can just insert the teeth. You don't need to bring the skull in. But if you want to use the skull for placement and like scale, you can do that. A little bit creepy. But if you already have your own gums and your own teeth, you can feel free just to use that stuff. And the reason why it's a lot more useful, like when you're working traditionally, you know, you can sculpt things separately or sculpt them in like you can go soft to hard or wax and clay and kind of mix and match for certain objects that you want to keep hard surface, or epoxy resin if you wanted to, epoxy stuff, and you can sand it, or Sculpey, you can bake it off and bring it in and sand it and work at that with Chavon or whatever. But digitally, it's super simple. It's all basically the same mesh, but now if I want to work on the teeth separately, I can, and I can like hide it, and you know, it's just one of the, let's turn on transparency. It looks like it's lined up enough. So that's just one of the many benefits of working digitally. So if I just want the teeth, I don't want the skull anymore. I'm going to grab a piece of the skull, a piece of the jaw, Control-Shift-A, Control-Shift-Drag to invert that, delete hidden, and now I've got some really creepy teeth in there. But as a separate subtool, so if I want to work on them separately, I've got teeth. You can make gums. You can make a tongue in there separately. Anything in his hand, you probably want to get rid of that stuff, and just have that as a separate mesh. So all of that stuff there. Good question. Is there a way to have that backface masking toggle set to on by default for all brushes? Not that I'm aware of. You could maybe, that would be a great one for hashtag #AskZBrush on Twitter. Those guys are usually Johnny on the spot, so they'll get back to you. One brush you might not want to use it for is the move brush, for example, or snake hook. So if I go into my move brush and turn on backface, it'll work. It's like, oh, I'm moving this thing, and then you go to the back and it starts doing some really weird things. So if I turn backface off and I'm moving it, yeah, it works fine. If you turn it on, you're going to see it's really doing some weird stuff with your geo because it has backface masking turned on. So use backface masking with the caveat that it may not work well with others on some brushes. I'm glad my panel loops video helped you fall asleep. Okay, if I miss something, just shout them out again. I apologize. Making a solid floor to work on for balancing the pose, absolutely. Anything to help you kind of orient yourself in space, you know. And also while you're working, let's go ahead and do it. So I've got a floor plane here. If I just do append, I could append a plane, but I'm going to append a cube just because I like working with objects with dimension. So I'm going to go ahead and move this down here. So now we've got a floor plane here. And now this, you know, visually just helps us kind of solidify where he is in space, how these things are going to work. You could go in here and start sculpting on this thing. So if I turn off project, turn on blur, just dynamesh this thing. And now we could go in here and be like, okay, there's something on here. Now, of course, you want to make sure you have, let's turn the floor off here. You want to make sure you have backface masking on, which is kind of weird that is it? Skull, I was like, I shouldn't sculpt through the object. What the heck? Oops. Let's re-dynamesh this thing. So we're dynameshing here. Or you know what? We have brush. We have our insert mesh brush. Yeah, now we're talking. That's a big head. So we'll go ahead and rotate this around here. be kind of buried in the mud here. And again, you know, we can go ahead and, okay, split mass points. So now instead of trying to sculpt a skull onto the ground, just have a skull in there available to you that now you can like go in through here and modify. So I'm just going to go I'm just alt tapping these subtools here. And now I've got separate sculpts. So the more subtools you have, the easier it's going to be to kind of work through. And now you can kind of go through here with your clay buildup and start, you know, building up mud or whatever, you know, pile of skulls, or I don't know. He doesn't have to be stepping on a skull, obviously, but whatever you want to do. Or you can go like brush, insert. There's some bricks and clods in here. Actually, let's do brush, insert. Is there? Yeah, clod. Let's see what's in our clods. Yeah, there's some good clods. So let's take this clod. Rotate that around. Something like that. Now, of course, if you want to split that off, you can just do a split hidden, split mass points, whatever works for you. But yeah, that'll help you kind of, you know, rotate and balance this guy and make sure he's cool. Yeah, it would be, again, it would be nice. If you guys find something, let me know next time, and I'll implement it. I've just been too lazy. What would you do when you use dynamesh for your model and the fingers stick together? That's, and I've gone over this. If you go, I'm gonna one more chance to spam this. Here's the link to my YouTube channel. If you go to specifically Twitch TV PavMic, at the very bottom, there's the base mail blockout. Here, I go over this quite a bit in that stream. Also, another one, if you go to the Pixel Logic one, and you go to the bottom of this one, there's an anatomy workshop first. Broadcast 1 is mostly just anatomy, and I go over this, and broadcast 2 is kind of making the body work. But what I would end up doing, for example, is just work on them separately. So, for example, you know what? We can just keep using this thing. So I'm going to grab this one. And if you ever want to clear some of the stuff out, just go to Subtool, Delete All, and then I'll go ahead and clear some memory. Because when you do a quick save, it's going to be saving all of this, so we don't really need. We'll do Delete All. This is one we're working on. Here's the head. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and save this off. Save as head remesh. So this is all ZTools all saved, so we'll delete all. And then this one, this cool sculpt we were doing, we don't need. Okay, so we're all cleared out here. The Thor head original we don't need. That's all been taken care of. So we've got this guy here. So what I can do is I can take this mesh. And what mesh is this one? This is his mesh with geometry, and then this is his original scan mesh. So what I'm going to do is take this scan mesh. I'm going to clone it off. And then I'm going to work on that one separately. So let's say I wanted to replace one of these hands. So what I'm going to do is turn off project, turn off blur, and we'll just dynamesh this here. So this hand here, I want to replace. So I'm going to take this hand off, and we're going to go delete hidden, and I'm just going to dynamesh this. And I go to brush, insert, and I will just grab insert mesh body parts here, and we'll grab a hand, and we'll just position that hand. Now we are going to have to flip this over. If you do it on this side, it'll be correct. So you know what? I'm going to do it on that side, and then I'm going to just do a split mass points, and I'm going to do a mirror. That's a deformation mirror across the x-axis here. And now we can just kind of position this thing. There we go. Now his hand is a little big, so I'm going to go ahead and scale this down. And we can rotate this into place. So now what's going to happen is, possibly if my dynamesh is low, if it's not, I'll lower it so that it does do this. Much different feel. Now he's singing opera. It's not a bad thing. So let's say I've got a hand in here that you want to work on. If you want to pose this hand a little bit differently, a lot of different ways. You can hold down control with any of your, like rotate in this case. And go through here, you can rotate these things down, or you can make like a bone out of it and reposition with the outer ring, and then rotate these things down if you want. Usually for fingers, what I'll do is just mask lasso, invert that, and rotate around, and then move, and just do any corrective stuff I want to do. Let's grab these two here, invert that. And again, you can control click to soften that transition. And you can do multiple fingers at a time sometimes if they're close enough, and you can get a decent, we'll take this finger here. We're going to get really dramatic with his hands. We're going to take this finger here, and we'll curl this up a little bit. Oh, so dramatic. So you've got his dramatic hands here. If you want to, you can go through and inflate some of this stuff, you know, beef up his hands just a little bit. He is Thor after all. Okay, so we've got these hands here. Now, if I dynamesh these together and his dynamesh tool, let's say we're just barely blocking this thing out and we're just at a really early stage. So this is our resolution on our body that we're working on. And we've added a hand. So what I'm going to do, if I take this hand, merge it down to the body in dynamesh, it actually worked fine because that resolution is low enough. Let's go ahead and undo that. I'm trying to make a point here. So let's do this again. Let's go ahead. You know what? Yeah, that'll work fine. So I'm going to go ahead and split hidden. Let's say we're at a really early stage. We're just barely blocking this guy out. We just got his forms in there. Let's keep dropping that down. Let's keep going. Yeah, so we're just blocking this guy out. And this thing doesn't need to be there because what this thing can be, delete hidden, we're going to go to brush, insert, cylinder, and we can go, let's redynamesh this, we can go here and then drag down, and we'll give him a running baton because he is the most dramatic sprinter in history. He's just won, and now he's singing an opera about it. So now we can do a split mass points. And now we've got our blockout mesh going through here, and it's like, okay, I've got a hand here. Let's go ahead and take our body here and take our hand, and we're going to merge this down and dynamesh. And now it's like, oh crap, my hand is destroyed. Well, what I would do is just work on the hand separately, and then as this guy goes up in resolution, you know, okay, so we started out here, now we're going to dynamesh him at a higher resolution. If dynamesh ever doesn't work, just tap it or smooth it a little bit and then redynamesh, and that'll kind of get that figured out. So now I can go in here and be like, okay, let's run a little slight polish here. We'll go in here with Damien standard brush. We can kind of start sculpting this guy out. So we'll go through and we can kind of start just doing our basic anatomy sculpts here. We can go, well, Damien standard to pull it down, and then we can go back in with our clay brush or a clay buildup or whatever, and just start, you know, we're just blocking in our mesh and smoothing and clay buildup and all this good stuff, right? So as this goes up in resolution, now we're at 368, and we can work on our hands separately. So we can just, on this one, we can just hit Control D because the geometry is fine. You don't have to dynamesh this thing. So we can just go in here with our clay brush and we start like sculpting in, you know, popping these knuckles a little bit. You know, and you gotta, you know, take reference images of your hand because that's really, and put it in this really dramatic pose. Andy Bergholtz has some really, really good hands that you can check out. So when you bring your hand, am I on camera? You can bring your hands back, you'll see all of these, your extensors, the ligaments kind of popping a little bit. So your flexors are down here, your extensors are here. So when you move your hand like this, these are gonna pop, these are gonna pop. Your knuckles, you can kind of look at those and see what changes they make. If you're doing your thumb, you know, you can pose it like this and you'll get this ligament to pop here. You get your little snuff box right through here. So all of that stuff and the stretched skin through here, all of those things really help sell your sculpt. So you definitely want to check that out. And, you know, get good reference. And, you know, these proportions look like they're a little bit off as well. So maybe that's not ideal. But anyway, you can sculpt on this separately. And then once you get everything up to the same resolution, when you merge it down eventually and you dynamesh, now you're fine. You know, you didn't lose any detail. Now they're all one mesh. So work on things separately until you're able to bring them together without getting like webbing or anything in there. Or work on them separately the whole time until you're detailed, and then you can do the whole process, go all the way back to the beginning of this video when I post it. And then you could, you know, do whatever you'd like. That's Khal Drogo to make him Aquaman. He needs shoulder length hair and a textured beard to change his hair. I would definitely use a new subtool for the hair. Again, just for ease of use. Because like if you put his hair and you have it swinging across his face and attached to his body, and then you're like, oh, you know what? I don't like that curl. Well, I have to delete all that or unsculpt it and then resculpt the face underneath it. And it's like, no, just use, man, I really like that hand. Yeah, you just use that. Yeah, so definitely use, yeah, so if I wanted to do hair on this guy, easy way to do hair, or one of the easy ways. So we've got our Thor remesh here. We have our null object here. So I'm going to go to brush, insert, sphere. Now, when it comes to sculpting hair, let's go ahead and do a split mask points. Let's go ahead and dynamesh this. There's a lot of different ways you can sculpt hair. You can use insert mesh brushes for hair. You can use, and the other cool thing about keeping them separate is you can go in here with your snake hook now and just like go crazy with like where you want the hair to go. And you can also use insert mesh. I mean, okay, so in my previous channels that I keep spamming, we do go over a lot of hair creation methods, both on the Pixelogic and on my channel. And so yeah, if you just wanted to do like a sculpt, you could just go through here and make whatever block out shapes you want, and then go in with your clay buildup, and we can start defining this. Let's go ahead and crank our resolution up a little bit. Or you can use insert mesh brushes, or you can use curve brushes if you want to do like, if you want to keep these strands separate. Let's give them some Pantene Pro V hair here. Keep raising this here. And let's intensity up. So yeah, you can't just do a single sculpt. If I wanted to do really highly detailed hair that I would want to keep separate, I would probably choose to do a bunch of curve brushes. Like we've done that. So if I go back through my videos, but if we go to brush, I'm pretty sure we have hair. Where am I looking at? So I would still sculpt this just to get your forms out, like where you want the hair to flow. But then if you want to keep them separated and kind of work on them separately, you could go to hair, make your own hairbrush, tube stylized hair, I think maybe. We can kind of drag out a curve. Oops, we got to make a slight change to that. Let's go to stroke here. Hold down shift to open up all these options here. We're going to go from thick to thinnish. And now we can go thick to thin. So, and also I'm going to go to curve. And we're going to go to depth. We'll bring this down a little bit. So as it draws out, it'll kind of be embedded a little bit. So now what you can do is you can kind of drag this out and tap off, drag this one out, tap off if you want to. You can even go through here and control shift to grab this one. And then you can just kind of use something previous and kind of start making these things intertwine and overlap like that. As well as you can use the curve brush to do that too. So if we go back to our curve brush here that we made, you can drag this out. And then if you want, you can go over here to stroke. You can turn off bend and snap. And then you can hit 5, which is going to save a snapshot. So you can do 5 and then drag out a copy. And then 5, drag out a copy, drag out all the copies you want. A lot of different ways to skin a cat in this program. Or you can just tap off and then just keep dragging these things out. Or if you want to continue this down, just keep continuing this down. Braids are really easy too. So if we go here and we want to do a braid on here, instead of sculpting out a braid, just drag that out, make our brush size bigger, tap off. Let's go ahead and do a split mask points here. And now we've got a giant braid that we have access to. If you don't like this geometry, what you can do is you can go here to your ZRemesher, hit depth size down to 0, hit same, just ZRemesh these things. And honestly, and then you get new geometry. And really, you could just hit Control D to start subdividing this thing. You can go here to inflate if you want to inflate this stuff up. And you can keep these things separately too. So as you're subdividing, you can go in here to each individual strand and detail it out, or H-polish it, or clay buildup to get more detail in those strands. Same thing as these things. So let's go ahead and Control-Shift-A. We'll go ahead and split that off. And then for these hair strands, as we subdivide, you'll be able to go through here and kind of use your standard brush or your smooth brush to kind of wrap some helixes around these shapes and detail them up as needed, but separately. So you can isolate them. And for this one, what we can do is just in auto groups here, and then you can just isolate them and sculpt on them as needed, or you can go to group split them all into separate strands and then merge them later. And if you want to do really cool stuff, let's go to brush. Let's go out just back to our brushes here, and we'll go to IMM. And these I got off of the Insert Mesh repository. So if you Google ZBrush Central Insert Mesh Multi-Mesh repository, there's a whole thread of this. So if you wanted to do like a beard, like a dwarf beard, oops. Again, we have subdivision history on that. So we're going to go back to our null, and we'll go ahead and split mask points on this one. Actually, let's do Control Shift. We'll grab all these, and then let's go ahead and split hidden. No, we can't do split hidden. Oh, that inherited the name. They're all null now. So now this one has teeth on it. Let's go ahead and split that off. Here's our actual null object. So we can go here, and you can do all the craziest decorative whatever you want to do. Let's say that's a beard here. So let's go ahead and split mask points here. And we can move this around as needed. And now we can just do inflate. We can inflate this up, and now it has, you know, whatever. Cool, everybody good? Okay, so the only option I found is keeping a Z project set up with your main brush to set up how you like and remember to work on various assets in there. That's a good point. So if you save a Z project, you can go here to your project tab, and then if you save it under File Explorer here, where are we at? ZBrush 4R7, Z project. So if you save your startup Z project in here, you can just load that up every time you start ZBrush, and then yeah, it'll have all that good stuff. Grady says if you use it on a move brush and turn on double-sided faces, sometimes a move brush will move the inside face out. So you can use that on the pants one we were talking about earlier to kind of move, you turn on back face, and then yeah, anything that's away from you, it'll pull, and then you could do the opposite. You could actually flip your normals as well. I sent you the creature model on Twitter and Google Docs. It'd be awesome if you can offer some tips in look and anatomy workflow. I got that. Unfortunately, what it saved out was a document. So when I go to document save as, it's a ZBR. So all I got in that Google Drive download was a ZBR file. So what that means is, let me see. Okay, so I do have it. So I'm going to go edit new. So if I go to document, open, and I go to streaming, fix my anatomy. So I have the document here, but I don't have the model. It's just a document. I can't go in and sculpt on this thing. So you'd have to go to Tool, Save As, and that'll save a ZTL, and then I'll be able to have the tool to download. Claude just come with ZBrush. So go in edit mode here. And I hope I saved this file out before I started destroying it with hair and stuff. Let's see. Delete, delete, delete. Don't need those teeth. Don't need this. Don't need his eyeballs. You can position those a little bit better. And the null object we can get rid of. Okay, so now we're all cleaned out here. And I'm just going to make sure I do a quick save here. Resolution. Good enough. Save as. Desktop. Thor. Yes. Cool. Hey, Yarp. Thanks for showing up. And again, if I missed something, just let me know. I'm just doing a really quick, I'm getting 3 different streams through my messages here. Actually, how are we doing on time? Okay, we got 20 minutes left. I'm doing a retopo for game. Do people retopo nails separately these days or still together with a hand? If you're doing really high fidelity stuff, or you want to, it kind of depends on your engine, kind of depends on the game you're making, kind of depends on how close you see your object. Generally speaking, I would zremesh everything together and then just give different material properties to the fingers. But if you're limited by material count, if you wanted to tile materials through your object, sometimes you can be limiting to how many materials you can have on one object. So, you know, you can have skin and, you know, nails on one object, and that's usually fine. So what you can do is assign a separate mask and then tile through the mask. Or if you want a lot of fidelity, you could just have the nails as a separate mesh and then bind those to your gamer's skeleton. But usually for video games, nails don't get that much special treatment unless there's a real reason to have it. Eyebrow sculpt by hand or same workflow as hair and ZRemesh curves, etc. I go through on, let me go back one. We go over a bunch of hair, and then I just retread basically, but on, did I do hair on my channel? I hope I did, because on my channel I'm able to kind of separate things out into highlights, and it just makes it easier to kind of go through and search. But we go through a bunch of different hair stuff, and the one I know that we went over it was on the ZBrush channel. Somewhere in here, I wish I had a better reply to you, but there is. We went over a bunch of hair stuff in one of these broadcasts. I want to say broadcast 6. Yes, okay, broadcast 6. I'm gonna link you directly. So here, and even if you go to about 45 minutes in on this video, there's eyebrows. So yeah, a lot of different ways, and you could do all of that stuff. Sorry, Thunder Bunny. I don't know why Nightbot's all over the place. Cool. Everybody good? Thanks for showing up, Thunder Bunny. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Custom brush of folds from Mars on my brush. It kind of rifled the edges. What would be the reason for that? What you could do, what can sometimes happen is you need to either find a mid value for your alpha over here. So if you're doing any custom alpha work, two things you need to watch out for is finding your mid value. You can dial this up and down, and then also changing your radial fade. So basically what radial fade does is kind of the same thing that your focal shift does. So if you change your focal shift down to -100, it'll get you a very tight outline all the way around your object. If your focal shift is at up, see how, as I move, let me make this bigger. See how that inner circle goes out towards the out? That means there's 0 fall off. If I bring this towards 0, see how there's kind of, it's just basically fading from the middle out. So you can turn on radial fade, which will do the same thing, as you can see in the alpha, to kind of get rid of any edges that are leaving you hard edges there, and then also your mid value sometimes if you dial that in, because if you're capturing an alpha and you've got a top point and a bottom point, you got to kind of dial in that mid value manually. So we go over that in the custom stuff. Cool. And this sculpt done by Hannibal Sculptor, and we just did a little bit of a cleanup pass here. Oh, you know what? We probably don't need this stuff in here either. Delete that. Delete that. Delete my Claude. There we go. Much simpler file. Cool. Okay. We back out of here. That's that Twitch TV. And again, just one more time. Here's a bunch of videos in here. If you want to see more image walkthrough stuff on my ArtStation page, it's a little bit of a nicer, if I go to my profile here, you can click through here and you'll get a bunch of image walkthroughs as well as videos that might be a little bit easier just to kind of go through and see stuff. If you want to download everything, I have a ZBrush and a Gumroad page. Let me bring those up. ZBrush. Let's see. So if you want to download the videos, any of the free stuff I have on YouTube, I have on Gumroad, so you can just download them and watch them whenever you want. And then same thing on my ZBrush here. You can check those out. Any tips to find my first work with modeling? Spam my portfolio to every company. It probably won't do you much good if you have, like, say, hyper-realistic work and you're trying to get a job at a place that does super cartoony mobile games, and vice versa. If you have really nice stylized work, it might be kind of a tough sell to some place that does hyper-realistic things. So ideally, you want to tailor your portfolio to who you're applying to, if you can. Everything does need a skull. We use 2 skulls on that one. Let's see, make sure. Okay. So we've got all that. We got these saved. If you ever want to just kind of clear out ZBrush here, this is the Opera one we were just kind of working on. And again, you can, as you're moving through, getting rid of these kind of things. And of course, it even started webbing in here, so you might need to go through here and move this up and do that. So with Move Acu turned on, I have a, talk about this every broadcast chance I get. I talk about this one. You go into curve here, turn on Acu curve, and that allows you to pull out to a point, as opposed to having it off and it doesn't pull out to a point. So I have a brush saved as Move Acu that I use. So Alt W is move, and then Alt V is Move Acu, and then I can just kind of pull up to a point and kind of start dialing that in. I should stream every week, so it's going to be Tuesdays on Pixelogic's channels 4 a.m. PST to 6 a.m. PST, and then on my channel Thursdays 4 a.m. PST to 6 a.m. PST. I should be here every week. If I'm not, I'll usually send out something on Facebook and Twitter just saying, hey, although I don't know if I did that last time, hey, I'm going to be out, so just in case. But yeah, it should be every week. Here, it's all saved. I guess we don't need that anymore. And yeah, you could go through and then, yeah, you could replace his head, just dynameshing and then taking Jason Momoa's head and putting it in there and then dynameshing it back, zremeshing it, all the stuff we've gone through, you could just do manually, and I'll get all that stuff going. So let me go through here. Yep, got our quick sites all the way back through. Here, hide, load tool. Let's go to my Gemini. See if I'm working on anything in there. Here's the California dogs I was talking about. We were talking about environment stuff. You can do a lot of that in ZBrush here, so you can kind of set this up. And then what we ended up doing was just going into keyshot, and you could do factories or whatever, and then taking this into keyshot. So if you have the keyshot bridge for ZBrush, all you got to do is go to render, external render a keyshot, and we'll just throw it over into keyshot real quick. Let's see how that works. Hi Mike, do you know of any way to switch between the current and last brush used? Ooh, that's a good one. Off the top of my head, I don't. I'm trying to think if there's an elegant solution. Yeah, so Dog Boy Fart was one of my students was working on. It's kind of a hybrid of a dog, and it has human hands. It's a really cool sculpt. But yeah, I don't know why that name was settled on, but you got to pick something, I guess. So we'll go to, let's go to center and fit selection here. Yeah, so whoa. Let's go. There we go. So now in Keyshot, you could go in here and kind of set up your camera view and save it. And then you can go to your environment here and you could bring up, some different environment lighting scenarios. Let's go to ZBrush here. Let's do like an outdoor lighting. And we can go to environment here and we'll take our color for our background down. Or you can make it white or, just something to key off of if you want. You can make it light green. And you can go through here and kind of set up your shot and capture, do a depth grab and kind of capture that and do whatever you need to kind of frame your object in here. And you could also do, if you wanted like specific lighting, if something was lit in this object, you could create an area light and replace that material, or just put an object in here. If you have Pro, I think you have to have Pro. You can add geometry. I guess we can do a sphere. And then for our sphere here, we can go to Move. And let's go ahead and scale this way down. Although maybe a sphere isn't the best choice. We probably should use a plane because it's a little bit easier to control where a plane kind of falls here. But now with this sphere, if we had something floating in the sky, or you know what, let's make something that's, and sorry if the stream's getting a little bit weird. So this Keyshot is a CPU renderer, so it's going to be utilizing a lot of my CPU, which also OBS is also using, so hopefully it's not degrading that too much. And now we can go over here to like area light for my materials and drag that on here. And now we have this thing that we can go through And you can change these lumens. You can change it to watts if you want. Of course, if you go to watts, you're probably going to want to make this power a lot less. And if you also wanted to, we can go ahead and hide this here. And you can go over here to sun and sky for your environment. And we can just do Los Angeles noon sun. Put that in there. And then we can go back to, let's put our sphere in there. And then on this one, we'll change it back to lumens. And if you don't want to, if you want it kind of glowing, but you don't want it visible, you can just turn off visibility to camera, and it'll still light up where it is. Visible in shadows, you can turn that off, and that way you can just kind of have a floating light in there. It's up to you. Cool. So I guess we don't need to be in here. Let's go ahead and exit out of there. And we'll go ahead and delete all. So that's the environment stuff. You can certainly do environments. We were doing, there's a, if you go to my, let me spam this one more time. If you go to Livestream Rocks, I talk a little bit about environment work there. I'm trying to remember if I talk about it somewhere else. Oh, you know what? On the Intro to Reptile Creature series, the bonus, I go through and I sculpt a little environment for him. Do I have that available for free? No, unfortunately. But I go through and I sculpt. Actually, I could probably have that here. Hold on, give me a second. Let's go to exported. Overview stuff. No, that's reptile recording. What am I looking for here? It was ZBrush intro, reptile. I guess it was that one. Bonus. There we go. So we go through column sculpt overview. Let me turn the sound down real quick. Yeah. So we basically go through here and we pose this guy out and we pose him on this little column, and then we scoped out this little oh, what's his name? H.P. Lovecraft kind of reptile creature from Lost, I want to say it's called like Lost City, or Nameless City is the name of the story that this came from. So he's got the reptile creature, and we sculpt a column on here, and we kind of ding it up a little bit, and then we go through and do all that good stuff. But that's unfortunately only on Gumroad and QBrush. You can find that. It's the Reptiles Creature series, and it's in the bonus section. So I don't know if that's interesting to anybody, but if it is, you can certainly check that out. I'll go ahead and spam my chats here. Cool. What would be a good hard surface project to teach oneself ZModeler with? I know it's subjective, but I'm curious what you would choose. Almost anything. I'm trying to think. If you have really good reference, like go down to your kitchen and grab like a KitchenAid stand mixer and just start working with that. Now, if you want to work, organic can kind of be a little bit trying. If you go to my playlist here, actually, I'll take you right to it. So on Twitch TV, PavMike, there's a hard surface walkthrough where I go over a bunch of different types of doing stuff. So here's the hard surface excerpt for like extraction and ZRemeshing. If you go to the Intro to ZBrush Part 3, on there I have free videos on the ZModeler. That is the city's name. Good. You were a sharp one, Thunder Bunny. Yeah, it's a really good story, and it's really short too. So if you want to like read it, I think it's Nameless City, and it's just kind of this weird story about this guy who I forget he has the book, and he's walking through, he's kind of as he progresses through the story, it gets stranger and stranger with all these weird reptile artifacts and stuff. It's a really cool story. But go to Intro to ZBrush 3, and that's the ZModeler stuff, and as well as the other link I sent you, that's more of like extract and ZRemesh hard edge modeling. You know, and I always go to, if you want to, and you don't even have to use a lot of that. So what I'll probably end up doing is I've been doing a lot of weapon sculpting at work, or at least concepting. So we can do some of that on this channel as well. We can just go through and do a really quick like weapon sculpt and kind of break that process down, because it's actually really fun to do. I've got a sample files here. So like something like this thing was done before ZModeler, and it's just dynamesh and clipping, transpose modeling I still use a lot. So if I grab this one down, so this mesh here, And and the making of this is on my ArtStation page as well as my YouTube channel. So, this was all done before ZModeler. So you could do a lot of hard surface work in ZBrush using like topology brush and Z-sphere topology and H-polish and just kind of getting your stuff down. And this started from just a very, very simple sculpt. In fact, hold on just a second. I can show you on my ArtStation page, but also on my desktop here. So if you want to see the full progression of this thing, all it is you start here just with basic sculpts, get your ideas out, split it up and refine it. And then as you go through, you're just refining. And of course, ZModeler could be used for a lot of this. Here's some insert mesh brushes for the hoses and stuff. And then, making your buttons. And then a lot of this stuff would be a lot easier with ZModeler now. But it's just finding something. On my CGMA class, I ended up doing this guy. ZBrush, render posed all. I made this guy along with my students. So if you go to my CG Master Academy class, I teach Intro to ZBrush. No, ZBrush for Concept and Iteration, where we basically go through the whole process of getting your concept sculpt out and doing meshes and stuff. So now this guy, he's part organic, part hard edge, but a lot of this stuff here was all ZModeler. All of this gun parts and this barrel back here for his ammo, and like this, I took this from a previous model that I had done for, I forget what, but it's on my ArtStation page. I basically made, I guess I could show you that too. So let me go to ArtStation here. Under miscellaneous, there's, this thing. Yeah, so I made like this weird tractor trailer with like missiles on the back, and then this insert mesh brush and modeling all this. So just finding an object, ideally one that you have good reference for. And that's why I say go down to your kitchen and just grab something with a bunch of hard surface shapes, just because, if you have computer stuff or a hard drive or, something just to kind of go through the process of learning ZModeler and box modeling and all that stuff. So I basically took these pieces here and used those again. So I go to my brushes, and I go to, I guess I would probably put it under military if I had to guess. Yeah, here's my bullet feed. Here's my commander. And here's my dozer. So if I hit M, now I've got all these dozer pieces I can kind of just put out there. So if I go here, I can just drag this out. And now I've got this piece. I can do split mass points here. Hit D to dynamically subdivide, and now I've got just this really not really complex, but a more complex piece that's right there. You can see it, and that saves you a little bit of time. Same thing for this gun. That gun was a lot of reused pieces, but you could just ZModeler it as well. This pouch over here, we go through on my channel, and we sculpt basically the exact same thing. It's just a mag pouch. So we're kind of in the middle of that right now on my channel for my other military dude, which is, we're kind of doing that as well. Let's go to load tool here. We go to streaming, PavMic mail, high res. So we kind of left him off at kind of a bad state here, but we're kind of working on a military guy. Let's go ahead and delete all these. So subtool, delete all, delete all. Drag this guy out. Okay, so here we're kind of in the middle of just creating that mag pouch here. But you can see the concept sculpt we're doing is this guy here. And if we want to look at the concept sculpt of that mag pouch, and again, it was just something done in like 2 seconds. Just create this really quick so you know where everything needs to go, and then you just kind of rebuild it. If you want more of a walkthrough on that, if you go to my ArtStation page and go to the boot tutorial, I walk through how to create the boot on my guy. So you can kind of walk through that, and there's a little image in there if you want to step through that as well. And also the videos, there's 18 videos that I walk through on making that boot, so kind of the same process. So we're kind of making this dude. Not sure what those things are going to be yet. Got to plug into the matrix, I suppose. All right, but it's 8 o'clock. I apologize. I was supposed to get to wispy hair, and really that would just be a lot of fiber mesh too. Or insert mesh brushes. So go to that hair one I sent out. I'll link you guys again. It was the Intro to ZBrush broadcast 6. If you go here, that'll walk you through fiber mesh and wispy hair, and we might get that next time. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying you have to use ZBrush or ZModeler. You can use whatever you want. I use all the programs. Usually I get my concept work done in ZBrush, but you can throw that into Fusion 360. We can hop into, or Maya. We did Maya Booleans the other day. Blender's another good one. I need to get into Blender and Houdini. I just don't have time. Cool. All right, everybody. Thanks for showing up. I'm going to hop off. I think because I'm broadcasting to YouTube, it's going to go straight to my YouTube channel when I'm done. It'll just save it, so you'll have that the video on demand available immediately. Eventually, I'll go through Twitch and then create highlights and then spit those out into my Twitch channel. So it'll be a little bit easier to search for you guys. But have a good day. Thanks for showing up. Oh, wait. I don't want to do all caps because Nightbot will yell at me. I'll do a lot of exclamation points. It'll let me. Yeah, okay. On the helmet, I didn't remesh everything. They were basically just dynamesh that was, what is it called? Decimated down. But, you could zremesh it and project all. That's definitely something you could do to kind of keep your file sizes down. Cool. Thanks, everybody. I'm gonna log off, and I'll see you guys Tuesday morning on Pixelogic's Twitch stream, and then Thursday morning right back where you caught me today. And see